Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started.
Well, hello today. So I'm going to just jump right in, and my bile is rising, just even getting ready to introduce what I want to talk about today with you.
Oh, gosh.
And as usual, I will be the first to say I don't have answers to a lot of this, but I think just talking it out loud and commiserating together, like if nothing else, I'm sure many people are dealing with some sort of version of this. And again, I don't have any solutions other than I hope we're not in this alone. So the topic is disgruntled patients. I know we talk about that a lot, and but I just feel like it's people are so volatile these days with so much going on in the world, and so I'm going to just start off with an example here, and then actually before I get to the example. You and I were at Sprig Live a couple of weeks ago, and we gave a talk on de-escalation and tips on how to de-escalate. So ours was actually a workshop where we did audience interaction and kind of led people through how to de-escalate a situation so you're not having these like explosions in your office. And afterwards, one of the attendees came up to us and was asking us questions on what she should do. And basically she's, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is she a new practice owner?
She is not the owner. So she is an associate in this practice, but she's the only doctor there. The owner never comes in. So she, even though she doesn't own the practice, she is the lead in that practice. And young in her career, I think 1 year under her belt, something like that.
Yeah, that's what I remember too. Yeah, it's probably within her first year that she's been there, and she said she got a 1-star review, and it was a patient's mom, and she's like, I don't even know what it was. It was a baby, so this is a pediatric dentist, and it was an infant oral health visit, whatever it was, and she's like, I mean, there was nothing really that happened in the visit. And the review was a 1-star. The doctor was very condescending, and we didn't care for her demeanor, and we will not be back there. And so really it seemed like it was just a personal attack on the doctor for no reason. And so we kind of gave her differing advice. And so I thought that would be a good one to talk about here. Can you add to that? Tell me what you advised.
Yes. So the doctor asked both of us, should I contact this parent? First of all, she was deeply offended and concerned by the review. She was like, nobody's ever told me that I have bad chairside manner, and the fact that I would come across condescending to a parent, I don't know how that happened. She was very confused and concerned about the feedback, and she said, if there's something I'm doing wrong, I really need to know about it, and this review doesn't really tell me exactly what I did wrong other than I came across as condescending. Should I call this parent? And so my immediate answer was absolutely, you should. And the reason for that is, first of all, this was one of her first negative reviews, again, young in her career. And so my take on negative reviews is there's always something to learn or to glean from those reviews. And so because she wanted to know, how did I come across this way? Is this something that maybe is happening more often that I don't know about? I told her the only way to know about that is to go directly to the source and to reach out to this parent. Now, there's a high likelihood that the parent won't respond, won't answer, won't give her the feedback that she needs, but at least she's tried to get some information. And my exact advice was, call the parent, let them know that you'd love to get some feedback. You would never want to come across as condescending, and could they tell you how exactly you came across as condescending? And if the parent answered, and if the parent chose to answer her question, to just listen, not to justify, not to defend herself, not to explain herself, but just listen to the feedback and then say, you know what, I really appreciate you taking the time to tell me that. It gives me some things to think about, and I just really appreciate your time today. That's it. And then ultimately she either gets some information out of that that's helpful for her in how she communicates, or she doesn't, and she's at least allowed the parent an outlet. As I was telling her this, I could feel the chasm developing where it's like, no, she's not on the same page. So tell your response.
So my response, of course, was no, I would not call this parent. But your advice makes perfect sense. And maybe that's what I would have done years ago. And you pointed out that with her being young in her career, it's not like she's got a lot of good reviews to buffer the one bad one.
Yep.
And so you're right. I probably at a point did want to find out like what I did. And I still do. I mean, it's not like I don't want to, but to me, this feels like a personal attack. Because if you're just going through all your baby exam stuff, like you should be brushing this way, or there's gingivitis here, or whatever. So I guess to me, I'm playing the conversation out and like, what would I say? So, hi, Mrs. Smith, you left me a bad review. I'm really sad about it. Like, what did I do wrong? I just didn't know, like, to me, again, I'm so delicate that I think it would hurt my feelings. Like, it's probably already hurt my feelings. And now to go and have to analyze and dissect, like, I just worry that myself going forward, will I continue to blunder even more because it would have been such a blow to my confidence?
Right.
And I see your point that it's probably already a blow to your confidence, and so it's better to have some answers. But to me, again, if it was something specific that the parent had, but when it's just this blanket kind of vague statement of, we didn't like the doctor, then I'm like, but then if you don't like me, then you don't like me. And not everybody can like me. I wish they did. So I don't know. I think that was my gut reaction, was just the thought of physically picking up the phone and what am I going to say? Like, you didn't like me. Why didn't you like me? Or all I was trying to do. But you're right. Like your point of saying don't really try to explain, because I think that's what I would do.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't mean to sound this way. The only reason I was saying this was because I saw this. I was trying to help you with whatever. So I think that's key. Just be ready to listen. Mm-hmm. But I think for me, I was just like, I just don't see how. I could just see myself either getting so crushed and apologizing 10,000 times for something that I don't know that I really mean the apology, or becoming defensive
of it, yeah,
or aggressive and going, well, this woman's just insane, how could she? So I just, for me personally, was like, I don't know how much good is going to come of this. So I kind of almost was like, well, could you have somebody else in the practice maybe reach out and say, hey, I'm the office manager, or I'm the hygienist, and I look at our reviews and we saw this review and it was quite concerning to both of us, and I thought I would be a neutral party where, if there's something you want to let the doctor know. I mean, she is very concerned about how she came across.
Yeah. And I think that's a good alternative to that, because the patient is still being contacted, or in this case the parent, the team member is really saying on behalf of the doctor she's concerned, wants to make sure you have a good way of telling us what went wrong, and that parent may be more honest with the staff member than they would be directly with the doctor, and it can still come across as a caring phone call. So I think that's a good alternative.
Because my fear would be if it was me alone too, and I'm not saying anything, and the parent's like, well, you said this way, and you criticized my brushing, and then my kid cried, and I just felt like a horrible parent because okay, well, thank you for the feedback. And I hang up, then I'm like, then is the parent going to go, you still don't care, you didn't apologize for it. So I think in my hands, and a more skilled, savvy person, but me, I'm one of those people who, is like, oh man, I should have said this, I should have said that. I don't know if anybody's seen the Seinfeld episode, The Jerk Store with George, and the shrimp comment. Anyway, we laugh about that, but like, that's who I am, where I'm like, 2 days later, I'm like, oh man, I should have said this. So for me, like, those conversations being put on the spot like that are really stressful. And then would that trigger another thing? The doctor actually called me and had nothing good to say, and I'm so glad in my decision so I would probably pun it, but I did see the value in what you were saying, if you can sound sincere.
And I think it's getting into the right headspace before you make that phone call. So Absolutely. If you yourself are the one that's going to be making it, you've first of all got to give yourself, at least a day or two to kind of recover from that negative review and to process it, because we always have an emotional reaction to that. And what we don't want to do is call that parent in the height of our emotion, and therefore we are more defensive or angry about it. We've got to be in the headspace of, listen, do I have something to learn from this conversation? And that's what I'm looking for, is to make sure that this is not something pervasive that other patients are seeing that I didn't realize. And that's what we're going for. And if there's nothing to be gained from that conversation, okay, there was nothing to be gained, but at least we made the phone call. And then oftentimes I would say there's at least one nugget or one takeaway that can happen. You know, it's interesting. I've got a client that is super bold in her dealings with disgruntled patients. So she practices in a very affluent area. They have very high expectations and make those expectations really well known. And they're the ones that, you know, your job is to bend over backwards for me, and I as the patient owe you nothing. You know, it's just a very difficult demographic. And so it is not uncommon for her to receive complaints. So she sees all of the emails she's copied on. So when it comes into the main info box, she also gets a copy of those. So she's very aware of those complaints when they come in via email. She's constantly looking at reviews. She's the emergency contact on the weekends for her practice. And so sometimes she'll get complaints directly over the phone. And I always, I can't think about her without smiling, because she's so bold she doesn't shy away from these interactions. She's not afraid of them. If she knows that, hey, we failed on some part, she's willing to admit that and you know, make restitution for that. But most of the time it's just unrealistic expectations from the patient, and they're crazy, and she's willing to just approach that head on, and she doesn't shy away from those. She handles those with grace, but also with confidence. And when her team needs to be defended, she is coming to the defense of her team. And so one of the things that I think plays into how we respond to disgruntled patients is our disposition, our personality. She's that strong choleric where she's not going to back down from a fight. And it's gone really well for her because she's consistent in the way that she responds. So I think we can't fluctuate in how we deal with disgruntled. Like, oh, we're going to deal with this one, but we're going to just ignore this one. We're going to respond to this negative review, but we're just going to ignore that one. We've got to figure out what is our game plan here, and how are we going to move forward with consistency. And I think that's a good takeaway. You know yourself well enough to know you're not going to call every single patient that has a complaint against the practice or leaves a negative review. You're not going to. It makes you sick. It makes you uncomfortable. It is not something that is going to be the norm for you. So don't make it the norm, right? If that means you're tagging in a team member that is constantly following up with these negative reviews or disgruntled patients, okay, great. Then that's your system. That's what you're doing going forward. Then you don't have to think about it. Some patient calls in and complains. You're like, we've got a game plan. We know exactly what we're going to do. So-and-so, you're tagged in. You deal with this. Or we do nothing, right? And we just ignore all of them. You just have to have a system that you can implement consistently.
That's a great piece of advice, because over time it's not an if you're going to get these complaints or issues, it's a when. And nowadays that when is happening far more frequently. Okay, so now another nauseating one. You mentioned the word restitution. And I just want to throw up when I hear about these things. And I feel like I hear it a lot more from my general dental colleagues, and my heart goes out to you guys, because I feel like you have the toughest job on the planet, trying to be the craftsman of so many different procedures with so many different materials, and now with assistants, and patients are crazy. So, I mean, trying to make somebody happy, it's very difficult. So I feel like I've heard this multiple times, but one example that you kind of mentioned that has stuck with me was a patient, I guess, that you said that the doctor did mini implants, and it was implant supported. I mean, implant supported, removable. Yeah. And denture, so it wasn't removable. And I guess they placed the implants, they placed the dentures. The patient came back for one post-op, and then didn't come back anymore.
Yeah.
And then, so anyway, let me let you finish telling the story since you're the one who's...
Yeah. So next thing they know, months later, the doctor's getting a letter in the mail from this patient that is demanding his $10,000 back because he decided to go a different path. He decided to go with it was a chain denture clinic, and they removed the mini implants and placed full implants and did a full, all on four type situation. And so he wanted his money back. What's interesting is there was nothing clinically wrong with the implants. As far as our knowledge is concerned, based on post-operative x-rays and all of that, everything looked stable. So we're not sure we're left to wonder what led him to choose a different path. What was he unhappy with? We don't know, because he didn't come back outside of the one post-op. And so now this client is left with well, what do I do? I mean, do I give that money back? Do I not give that money back? And so my advice to him, especially because so one of the things I appreciate about him is he wasn't just like, well, heck no, I'm not doing that. He actually thought about it. Like, let me get advice he's got a prosthodontist that reviewed the x-rays, reviewed the placement of the implants. Does this look clinically sound? Can you see anything here that would have gone faulty? No. Prosthodontist friend said no, looks good. He ran it by the person that he got certified to do mini implants with. So all the courses that he had with this man, he sent the information to him. Do you see anything clinically wrong here that I did? So I appreciate that about him, that he just took the time to make sure, because he thought it was clinically sound, but he had the humility enough to go, let me run it by people that know potentially even better than I do. And they all said, looks great. So, and we had a couple episodes on September and how I've got a ton of clients that are just dismally slow right now. Dismally slow. So it's like, in all honesty, I'm nervous to give up that $10,000 right now based on the way the last couple of months look. That makes me very concerned. And so my advice to him was, hold on to it. Just wait. Ultimately that gentleman is going to have to prove that something clinically was wrong in order to demand your money back or to be, owed that. So I'm like, let's just sit and wait on it, especially because the $10,000 really would be hard to come by right now. Let's just wait. And when I was telling you this, you had a different reaction. So I want the listeners to hear your reaction too.
Well, I just, I worry that, it opens yourself up to a lot of things. And so, for example, now, if the patient is like, well, so either way, like the whole thing, like every onion layer is really stinky in this one, because let's assume the doctor does give the $10,000 back, but we don't know what this patient's MO is. Like, right. Did you really just want the money back because you went and got implants elsewhere, or what happened? Are you going to come back and say, well, but for my pain and suffering, I actually want this. So you gave me 10, like, is it ever going to end? Or is it going to be one that I'm going to complain to the state board now?
Yeah.
Because you, I don't want this to happen to any other patient. Or if you don't give the money back, is that what their recourse is going to be? Is I'm going to call the state board. I'm going to leave negative reviews. So it's just one of those things where you're like, oh my God. So at this point, my question to you too, is this where you reach out to your liability? I don't know. I really don't know. Mm-hmm. And so the whole thing is just like, well, because if he complains so part of me goes, is giving the money back the easy way here?
Right.
And hopefully the patient just goes away. But those are the other two things that in the back of my mind go, patient may not go away. Mm-hmm. We don't know. And then if this does end up going to the state board, well, now the state board has to look at everything. So can this client be sure that they've got every vital, every consent form signed, every x-ray is diagnostic, there were no misbillings, the ledger's accurate? Like, it just opens yourself up to all of this. And then I start going, you know what, the $10,000 might be cheaper than all the lawyer fees of having to deal with this. Mm-hmm. Although you may have to deal with it all anyway if they complain. So I just was like, Bethany, I want to throw up for your client. Mm-hmm. Like, this is awful to be held by your balls like that and you don't know what to do. So even you saying now, like you just said, just sit on it. But what does that mean? Like, is he replying to the patient? Is he ignoring the email? Somebody from his office calling? Like, now what?
So that's a great question too. My advice in this particular situation, and this goes back to a situation that came up with one of my clients a couple years ago, and I reached out to a lawyer friend of mine that deals with this, and his advice was don't respond. Like, wait for it to see if it will subside on its own.
Meaning he's saying, I want my $10,000 back. The dentist is like crickets. And then see what this patient's going to do. Like whether they're going to say, did you get my email? I want my money back. Or see if they're going to go away, or see if, okay.
Exactly.
That makes me nervous, which I'm glad a lawyer is saying this, but that makes me really nervous.
Yeah. Basically, I said, well, why? Why would we not respond? And his advice was, your response starts to dictate the course that you're going to be walking down, right? So let's say you open up this conversation with the patient. Oh, why do you want the money back? He said, it could be that they were sending that letter and just seeing like what's going to happen. He said, you don't know the intention of the patient until you respond. And so he said, sometimes the hope is that they just sent that letter out as a wish and a prayer. Like, I wonder if they'll just send me my money back. He was like, if that's their intention, and we hope that it is, your lack of response will kill it. It's done. They hoped that they would get $10,000 back, and they didn't get it. So, oh well, I tried. So he said, if we don't respond, and they're that way, it goes away, and you never have to worry about it. He said, if we were to respond to that person that was a wish and a prayer, well, now they have hope that their wish and a prayer is actually receiving attention, and now they're going to dig their heels in and make it an issue when it was just a wish and a prayer. So he said, your reaction actually sets the course for it being something that they're going to pursue when you had a chance of it just being a wish and a prayer. And I thought that made a lot of sense.
That does make a lot of sense, and that's quite wise. I guess to me, the only thing that I still go, but people are so volatile these days, and if they're like, you ignored me, I'm going to make you pay attention to me now. Yeah. I'm coming back at you. So, because I feel like, 4 or 5 years ago, people were, but now, especially with, I don't know, with so much social media, so much, I think 4 or 5 years ago, people weren't as hateful.
Right.
And now, the last couple of years, like, hate is so out there.
Yeah.
And being very vocal with your hate has become acceptable. And I think, especially now with where it is, financial implications of pandemic and the world and the inflation and recession and blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't know. I would be curious to know if that lawyer still, like, now in today's climate. Like, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. That's, I think, in principle, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, and here's the thing to think about. Let's say that he's doing that. He's just going to kind of, sit back and watch and wait. The cool thing about him is he immediately started taking action to try to figure out amongst his prosthodontist friends, am I clinically sound here? He's done homework so that if and when the patient reaches back out and says, so this was a physical letter that was sent, by the way. If and when he reaches back out and says, did you not receive my letter? I sent a letter. The response can easily be, actually, I did receive your letter. I've been doing a bunch of homework on my end and wanted to reach out to you after I had completed my homework. So thank you for reaching back out. I want to, schedule a time to talk with you in person about the homework that I've been doing. Because that's the truth. Now, if we just ignored it and didn't do anything with it, then we can't really honestly say that, but he can. He honestly was doing homework. So we can always have a justified reason for the delay in response. If he never responds, okay, great. He faded off in the distance. If he does respond, we can let him know, yes, we've been hard at work evaluating your case, getting specialists to look at your case to figure out what might have gone wrong that caused you
now, could that get him in trouble if the patient's like, I didn't say you could show my case to somebody else? Like, what do you do?
No, because there's no name being shared. So technically he hasn't broken any type of HIPAA violation.
Right, but from the patient standpoint, thinking, well, how dare you go and talk about my case to all these people?
Maybe. I don't think that that's necessarily, maybe if they're crazy enough, that's a response. But I would imagine if it's somebody that's just trying to get money back and they know it's a long shot, the fact that client pulled in specialists to look at his case, hopefully would shut it down.
I guess to me, and again, not that I have any advice, but when I'm looking at this, I'm like, but the patient seems crazy to begin with. Something's off, because if you just didn't go back for anything and you moved on, that is crazy. Who does that? Who does that? Who gets pays that kind of money, gets those many implants, and unless something happened in that practice, like you feel like the doctor harassed you in some way, or you feel like it's just such an odd step to just disappear and go back and get it redone. So something's not right.
Well,
there's a screw loose, pardon the pun here. Something's not right. So to me, that's where I think that's where
drums. We need
yeah. I'm here all day in this closet. But you know what I mean? If we were talking about a rational person, all this makes sense. But the whole thing is so irrational that I start going, does this put us in a different league right now?
So here's something to think about on that. So let's think about the two ways that this could go. And we kind of alluded to this in our lawsuit one. It can go one of two ways, like civil court type thing, right? Where we're going not state board route, but civil court route. So again, one of the advice that my client received was they would have to prove in civil court that clinically something broke down in order for you to be on the hook for this $10,000. State board route, that's the really fun route to think about, because as you mentioned in one of the previous episodes, if it goes state board route, the denture clinic group that took this patient on, removed implants, placed implants, well, they're a part of this case. So one of the advices that my client received was, in all honesty, if it goes state board route, based on what we're seeing and how these implants look great, you placed good implants, it is going to be the responsibility of that group to justify why they removed perfectly good implants, advised a patient to remove perfectly good implants, and redo everything. So the advice that he received was, in all honesty, this looks so clinically strong that if it goes state board route, you're going to be fine. If it goes civil court, obviously that's more up in the air, but still they would have to prove.
So I'm going to argue with you're going to be fine state board route, because can you vouch for everything else in your record to be fine? Because they might say there was no standard of care violation in implant placement, but you didn't take vitals on this day and you didn't.
True.
So
it's a can of worms.
Yeah, and of course, then if it's those smaller allegations, maybe you get a lighter slap on your wrist, maybe you get lucky and you get dismissed, but I still think that is not a good place to be in, because it's you don't know, like civil litigation it's I think is a little bit more clear cut in this case. But to me, altogether, that this patient's a little something's not right. It just makes me nervous. Now, when we were talking about this the other day, you said your dad, who has been a guest on this, and we all want him to be a more frequent guest on this, you said your dad would almost always pay it back, and you two were at odds with that. So can you tell us more about that? I wish he was here right now, because I want to know from him, would you give it back? And if so, based on everything we've talked about, would you still do that today?
Yeah. So Dad, for the longest time, he's quick to give back. It drove me crazy, especially because, again, when we talk about my history with the practice, I was brought in to find money, to save money, to help them, kind of
survive.
Sustain, yeah. So then when we get a patient that's demanding money back, and my dad's just almost always like, yeah, okay, give it back. It drove me crazy, because I'm like, oh, that's $1,800 that I fought for in collections, and now I'm back to equal. So in my mind, financially, the refund needed to make sense. Did we do something wrong? Did we truly owe that patient that refund? If we're just doing it because they raised a stink, well, I'm going to raise a stink too, because I fought really hard for that $1,800 that we're now giving back. So he and I would definitely be at odds. Now, one of the things that I'll say about him is this did not happen very often in his practice. And so, and he I think he alluded to this in one of the episodes that I had him on for. As much as we try to do great dentistry, there's going to be mistakes or things that come up, and we didn't do a perfect job every time. We can't, right? So there's cases that he feels like, oh, I probably could have done this a little bit better, I could have had better margins on this crown, or whatever the case may be. But he said, you know what? I very seldom have patients that complain because they like me. They know that I care. There's a feeling that he creates. And I've told this to a lot of my clients. He has just a masterful way of interacting with patients. He's that uber sanguine and can just bring warmth into a room, and patients just love him when they love you and feel like you care, like you're listening and you care. That minimizes the complaints. And so it's very rare for him. So when it does pop up, he tends to be more like, give it back. No big deal. Because first of all, it's rare. It's not happening very often. And his mindset is, if they're unhappy and they think that they're owed that money back, well, who am I to stand in the way of them getting their money back? I see it very differently, but he's always been that way. So he is quick to give money back if and when that pops up.
So then you go back to then luck and personality, because then I start going, okay, well, is this client of yours not a likable person? And I'm sure they are, you know what I mean?
He's so sweet.
But then you start going, like this one that had the negative review for her demeanor. Mm-hmm. Well, she did look like a minority of some sort. I'm not sure what her background was, but she did not present with uber confidence and uber whatever, but she was fine. There's nothing wrong with her.
Yeah.
But I was like, I can bet you anything, you have the whiff of new grad trying to please, and this mom is sniffing that out. It's going to pick on you. Mm-hmm. And so I do go back and say there's some colleagues of mine that I'm like, dude, you get away with everything. Mm-hmm. Because there's just something, like one in particular, there's just something just, aw shucks about you. Mm-hmm. You just look like, oh, you're such a nice guy. You're soft demeanor. You've got this sweet smile. And so people just want to take care of you. You're the dentist who's supposed to take care of everybody else, but everybody takes care of you because you just have that aura about you. And so, I guess how do you...
Yeah. How do you fabricate that when it's not natural for you? And I think that's the question of the day. It doesn't mean that it eliminates a disgruntled patient, but if we can minimize that because we made them feel a certain way in the practice, then if that means we remove some of that risk, it's well worth harnessing or tapping into a part of us that's not natural. So maybe we're not the awesome little sparkly person that walks in and just brightens the room, but how can we tap into that to make this patient feel like they're our one and only attention? So a couple of things that you and I have talked about, just good listening. Are we asking open-ended questions that show the parent or the patient, I want to listen to you? Is our body language showing that? So I feel like body language is 90% of this. If when we're asking a question, if we've physically distanced ourselves from the patient, we're as far back from them as we can, we're sitting back with legs and arms crossed, and we don't look like we're engaged, or worse, and I see this all the time, they're answering our questions and we're back behind them at the computer, back to them, not even eye contact. I honestly can't talk to people without eye contact. I find myself moving around the person to get in their line of sight because I feel like we're not going to get each other if there's no eye contact. But in the dental field, we do this all the time. We step behind the patient and ask questions and document on the computer, and they're talking to the wall in front of them. And so creating that feeling of, nope, I'm asking all these questions. I'm smart enough to remember your answers for the 2 minutes that I'm spending sitting here to then go back behind you and document. Or better yet, I've got an employee in here in the room with me that is documenting on my behalf for that, but I look like I'm interested. I'm near enough to you that it shows I'm interested. I've established eye contact with you. I've got open body language. And I'm asking open-ended questions, not just very black and white, yes or no questions. I feel like I'm trying to get to know you. That can go a long way, even if you're a super introverted personality. And that's hard, right? Because the introverted personalities, especially our uber phlegmatics who have very low facial expressions, and we're like, do they have any emotions? The phlegmatic's going to have to harness some facial expressions to, raise the eyebrows when the patient says something interesting, to smile when they say something funny. And that may even take, as silly as it sounds, that may even take practice in a mirror. to know, oh, this is what a smile looks like. This is what raised eyebrows look like. But that is valuable time spent if it means the patient feels in that moment like you were present and you cared.
Yeah, and that's what I wonder too with this doc of yours. Somewhere some trust has been lost, and so that would be my question. It's you've done some excellent, sounds like excellent technical execution of the case, but for some reason the patient didn't think so. Like
Right.
for the patient to put themselves through this again,
Yeah.
something is off, whether it's with the patient or with the communication, how they were made to feel. Like it's just,
To me, every disgruntled patient is a good opportunity to go back and reevaluate our systems, our communication. How did this happen? Oftentimes we're so prideful that we're like, oh, that's just a dumb patient, dismiss that. I feel like we miss an opportunity to learn in that scenario. As much as we would love to have 100% positive feedback, that's not practical. That's not realistic. So, man, even if we've got 2% negative feedback, that's 2% that we can learn from if we're willing to pause and to listen, or to look at the negative review and go, wow, how did we get here? Let's go back and reevaluate this whole situation. Where would they have come up with this, and could we do anything differently? Same thing with this disgruntled patient asking for the money back. Ooh, where did we get off with this? What could we have done differently, if anything? But let's at least take the time to reevaluate.
because it looks like the doctor is doing a great job of reevaluating the technical aspect.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, now that we've been talking about this, I start going, I mean, unless all the implants fell out and now the patient's like, I don't have trust in them, but it doesn't sound like they should fall out because it sounds like all the experts have looked at it. So then I start going, something else caused this patient to lose trust. Now, was it, I see this a lot too, and it's infuriating and nauseating that sometimes an assistant will say something.
Mm-hmm.
And the patient grasps onto that and turns it into whatever they turn it into. So did somebody over the phone say something?
Right.
And unintentionally, not on purpose, but did somebody say something that now has casted this doubt in this patient's mind?
Yeah.
That now they sought another dentist and undid everything you just did. Like they didn't, it wasn't just a filling. This is like a pretty big procedure. They were on board for a reason, and suddenly they're off board and something's happened. So I'm hoping this doc has gone, okay, clinically, technically we were fine, but I hope they continue to do their research and how did we lose the trust of this patient?
Yeah, I think that's a really good takeaway on this, and any complaint, honestly, is take the time to evaluate, to critically evaluate where something could have gone wrong, and are there changes that we can practically implement because of this disgruntled patient. And I think that's a huge takeaway. Awesome. Hey, thanks for bringing up a bile-inducing conversation.
I was going to say, we should have inserted somewhere, grab your barf bag. Like,
Yeah.
Sorry if any of you guys have made a mess on yourselves now. This is such a nauseating topic. Ugh.
Hey, hang in there, though. I mean, again, even this example shows we're not alone in this. We do have colleagues that are experiencing a higher number of disgruntled patients. So I think it's an important subject matter for now.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone, but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.